All right, Justin. So the 2020 Big Ten schedule was just released. We're going to take a look at Michigan's schedule and what they have going on. So they start off the season at home versus Purdue. Then we travel to Minnesota, have Penn State at home, travel to Rutgers, have Michigan State at home for the second year in a row. Then a bye week. Then we're at Indiana, at Ohio State, travel to Wisconsin, travel to Maryland, another bye week, and we finish off with a trip to Northwestern. So what are your thoughts on this? Any big games that stand out?
I mean, just looking at the first three games, those are actually three pretty tough games. Purdue, although not a Big Ten power, but they seem to always have one game or two games a year where they surprise everybody. So with Rondale Moore coming back, I think they could be dangerous. And then, going to Minnesota, even though they don't have Rashad Bateman, they still have Tanner Morgan, still have a really good squad. PJ Fleck has them rolling. Being in Minneapolis, that for that game could be a tough one. And then straight into the Penn State game. So those are two back-to-back big games for Michigan. Penn State, I'm not sure if they're going to be as good as before, but they still should be atop the Big Ten. So three tough games right away.
Yeah, for sure. And a big thing that I'm looking at on here is obviously there's home games, there's away games, but there's no fans. So is there going to be a true home team advantage when we travel places? Are we going to have a true home team advantage? Because like you said, Purdue is a team that usually has a pretty big upset every year. And that could be something where they pull that upset away from home because there's not really a home team advantage when they come to Ann Arbor. So I'm curious to see what kind of happens there. But we can look at the next three games here. At Rutgers, I mean, that's going to be a win. I think that's the only true win we know we're going to have in the season. But then we play Michigan State at home for the second year in a row. That one was kind of strange to me because typically we go back and forth. Where we have either Michigan State and Ohio State away or Michigan State and Ohio State at home. But this year we've got Michigan State at home again, and then Ohio State we're away at. After the Michigan State game. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say there, so that was actually, it must have been 5 or 6 years ago now that we had Michigan State away 2 years in a row. So this is them kind of fixing that. Gotcha. I think that's as much as, it doesn't matter because there's no fans to have Michigan State at home, but just having that game now away while the Ohio State game is at home, having Michigan State and Ohio State flip-flop home and away is huge for Michigan's schedule going forward.
A better balance for sure.
Yep.
Bye week after that, and then we go to Indiana. So at Indiana's one of those teams that last year started getting on the up and up, and I don't want to mess up this guy's name, but Pirine, the quarterback, I think he's healthy now because I believe last year he got injured.
Or is it Panay?
P something. We'll go with Mr. P. It's Mr. P at quarterback. I believe he's healthy now because I know last year they started off hot and then they had to put Ramsey back at quarterback, who was the backup. But a lot of people are picking Indiana as a sleeper this year, so that could be another tough game.
Yeah, for sure. I think that bye week right after the MSU game, even though MSU isn't what they, have been in the past, is still big, right in the middle of our schedule. And then I think the bye week going into Ohio State. So you have Indiana, you have bye week Indiana, and then Ohio State. I think having that bye week right, in the couple weeks before Ohio State is pretty big to get guys healthy and make sure that we can go into that 2-week span there with hopefully a full roster. And then, it's crazy. We talked about the two, Minnesota, Penn State back-to-back, and then we have Ohio State and Wisconsin back-to-back. So not ideal, I would say, as far as those big, those are the 4 big games that Michigan was going to have on its schedule, and they're both back-to-back, so they're not spread out. Wisconsin being at home, I think is big. I'm glad that we kept that one at home, but having it, right after the Ohio State game, I worry that, everyone's going to get up for the big Ohio State game, and then it's hard to get up, emotionally and physically and everything 2 weeks in a row like that.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it was a 4-game stretch previously before the season got reordered where it was Minnesota, Penn State, and who's the fourth one? Might have been Wisconsin, right? In a
Wisconsin, we were
three
starting
of
the year off with, so I
okay,
think it
so
was
that might have
yeah.
I think it was those three teams, or maybe MSU might have been in there,
Mhm.
but yeah, back to our four toughest games are split up into basically 2 games in a row, which is not easy on the schedule, but I mean it's college football. What are you going to do about it?
And then what do you think about having Ohio State not last game of the year? We had talked about it on our podcast and other spots to have it beginning of the year. Now it's kind of in the middle. What is it? October 24th now.
Yep.
So not in November for the first time in ever, I believe.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, if the, basically my assumption is the reason they're moving it up is because they want it to be played, right? If you're going to move it up, move it to September. That's my thought process. Because if you want to make sure the game gets played, get it as soon in the season as possible. I was hoping for start off the season with it. I think that could be a big, just like hyped up matchup. Anything can happen week 1, just like anything can happen in week 12. And then, if we lose, the loss is out of the way. If we win, it creates hype for the remainder of the season. I think there's no downside for Michigan if that could have happened, but obviously there's more factors than that to go into it. So it'll be strange to see it in the middle of the season.
Yeah, and I think, like you just said, it doesn't make a huge difference moving it up only 1 month.
Right.
If they would have moved it up to, like you said, in the beginning of the year or even, in the first 3-4 games or something like that, that's a big difference. But when it's still in the, second, third, or third half, second half of the season,
Still
third of the
finishing our
season.
coffee.
Yeah, exactly. When it's still towards the end of the season in the schedule, it doesn't make that much of a difference to me. But I do still like that bye week. That's a couple weeks ahead of that, going into that two game stretch of Ohio State and Wisconsin.
And then Maryland on the schedule. Rough year last year after starting off pretty strong. They're bringing in the younger Tagovailoa brother.
Yep.
What do you got on that game?
Yeah, I think that they could be moving up, but it's not going to be. They're not going to be there yet next year or this year. I mean, so the Tagovailoa kid, he is going to be a stud. I imagine he's very good. Mike Loxley is the coach there, and I think he's got them rolling a little bit. But I mean, if you just look at the score of the Michigan Maryland game last year, it was an absolute blowout. So maybe Giles Jackson will return the opening kick again. I don't see the end of our year here being too tough.
Yep. So then bye week, and then we added our last game against Northwestern. That was the 10th team that was put in. So I mean, not really too much to go on there. We're getting close to about 10 minutes. Got about a minute left. So if you got anything you want to say about Northwestern, and then let's do predictions.
Yeah. So nothing really about Northwestern. I think that's going to be a win. I did want to say too, if you look at Ohio State's schedule too, we have to compare everything to Ohio State. They have a very easy schedule. They have Michigan at home. They have Penn State away, Iowa at home. They don't have Wisconsin on their schedule. They've got their first 5 games: Illinois, Rutgers, Purdue, Indiana, Nebraska, MSU. So I mean, it's going to be 6-0, 5-0, whatever. Like, gosh, they don't have a tough game until Michigan.
No.
And so, which is frustrating. And then they end the year with a couple tough ones against Penn State and Iowa. But it's just like, it just seems, I know it's easier for them because they're a good team. So everything seems like an easier win. But just seems like they get the easy route a lot of these, just always in life, I guess.
What do you got for record prediction for this season for Michigan?
So I'm going through this. So I'm going to go Purdue win. I'm going to go Minnesota win. I'm going to go Penn State win. I'm saying we get through the gauntlet of the first 3 games with 3-0. Then Rutgers 4-0, MSU cupcake game basically 5-0. We're gonna go into the Ohio State game 6-0, and then unfortunately, I don't have the nuts to predict anything other than an L there for the Wolverines. But I think they actually probably go back-to-back losses there, Ohio State and Wisconsin, and then finish out with wins against Maryland and Northwestern. So I'm going to say 8-2.
I'm with you on the 8-2, and I've got our 2 losses coming back-to-back weeks right after the bye week, Indiana and Ohio State. I just think Indiana's always a tough game. Indiana's always a tough game. They've got a lot of hype going into the season. I'm going to pick that as a loss, and then Ohio State's always a loss. So I've got us beating everybody else.
All right.
Hopeful.
Yeah.
Hopeful.
I mean, you know what, though? We're just happy to have a schedule, right? Football is kind of here. We've got something to go off of. Let's hope and pray that this schedule will hold up and we'll actually be there, in a month or so. But football is coming.
It's almost back. All right, so that's what our kind of release of the 2020 schedule is going to look like. Our little bit of predictions. We'll talk about this more on the next episode, I'm sure. But thank you for tuning in, and go Blue.
Go Blue.